Hi, my name is Misha Santora, and I'm the Artistic Director of the Minnesota Bach Ensemble. Thank you so much for joining in this very special virtual performance. We are facing some tremendous challenges during this ongoing pandemic, and of course it's affecting performing arts organizations particularly hard. It's because of that that I really want to thank the board of the Minnesota Bach Ensemble for their vision and their determination to put on this virtual concert. I also want to thank the musicians of the ensemble for going along with this, for coming up with ideas, working through the safety measures and all the precautions. It's gotten a lot more complicated to put something like this together. Of course, the tremendous thanks also goes out to all of our incredibly generous supporters. Without your help, we would not be here today. Again, thanks for joining us, and I hope you'll enjoy this beautiful music that we'll be able to present to you today. The first Gamba Sonata by J.S. Bach, which of course today is played by the cello, is one of those special pieces where Bach really becomes very intimate. He uses a very small complement of forces, two players really. Of course, J.S. Bach is the namesake of our organization, and a lot of people have a very special connection to his music. He, of all Baroque composers, is the most complex, the most contrapuntal composer. And you will hear that in this piece as well. Even though it's a lighthearted, serene composition. The first movement is in 12/8. It's this beautiful, softly lilting texture throughout. The second movement has that sort of agitated drive that's quite characteristic for J.S. Bach. For the fast movements, it's imitating a lot between the different voices. The very special movement is the third movement, which almost feels like one of these heavy-hearted monologues. It's the pace keeps exactly the same, but the harmonies go through these amazing modulations. It's quite chromatic, and it's its own little emotional island to itself. And then, of course, we'll end up with something fast and upbeat again. So it's really the classic Baroque slow, fast progression. Throughout this program, there will be all kinds of connections between Bach and the other composers, but I hope you'll enjoy this beautiful performance of the Gamba Sonata No. 1 in G major. Haydn's London trios come at a particularly interesting point in the composer's career. At this point, he had been employed at the Esterhazy court as a court composer for many, many years. His duties changed, and he suddenly had the option to do other things. And sure enough, there comes an offer from a London impresario to visit that big city in Great Britain. And he was very intrigued. Haydn was already fairly well known in England. And suddenly he had the option to write music for a much bigger, much better orchestra than he had at his disposal up to that time. And so he was very excited. So the music that he wrote during that time was very serene, upbeat, positive, and that's very much reflected in this particular piece to the London Trio in G major. This marked a period in his life where he became a lot more famous. He also did financially very well. And one of the reasons why I love this piece so much is because it reminds me of the larger orchestral works of his, especially the London symphonies. He wrote a whole bunch of those during these years. And, he's, of course, the master orchestrator. He employs the full orchestra. But then very often he comes down to this chamber music-like texture in a particular transition or a second theme or something like that. And he'll employ only one flute and an oboe and maybe one string voice. And that's exactly what this London trio sounds like throughout. So I'm thrilled we have the option to perform this piece for you, and I think we can all use a little bit of this sort of upbeat, positive outlook right now. The next piece is a trio sonata by Telemann in E minor. This particular piece is interesting because it's part of a much larger work that Telemann called Tafelmusik. Tafelmusik was an entrepreneurial project that he actually sold subscriptions to wealthy arts patrons. And it was very successful. The first 200 that he sold, they got their names inscribed in the original score. And he sold it at a very high price. These pieces include essentially all the major instrumental Baroque genres. So it's comprised of orchestral suites, overtures, trio sonatas, solo sonatas, and so it's really kind of a kaleidoscope of Baroque instrumental music. Tafelmusik literally translates into table music, so it was intended to be played by the dining table of a wealthy aristocratic household. Of course, that's really where Baroque instrumental music comes from originally, as it became more sophisticated and became more like concert music, which of course the Telemann piece that's really what it is. I'm sure we can present this particular piece. It shows off Telemann's sort of wit and spirit. It's all very upbeat. Telemann was actually one of the most prolific composers in classical music. And he has an interesting connection to J.S. Bach. They were friends, they knew each other, respected each other a lot. And Telemann was Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's godfather, J.S. Bach's second eldest son. On top of that, Telemann actually got offered a job in Leipzig as the cantor of the Thomaskirche, the Thomas Church, which he then declined because he got a better offer in Hamburg. But that's the job that then J.S. Bach got later on. So their lives kind of crisscross throughout their careers. I hope you'll enjoy this spirited performance of this wonderful piece by the Minnesota Bach Ensemble.
My name is Tami Morse, and I'm a harpsichordist, and I'm actually the founding harpsichordist of this group. So when Minnesota Bach Ensemble gave their very first concert, I was a part of that, and I've just loved playing with the group since then. Aside from being a freelance harpsichordist, I'm also the executive director of the Lyra Baroque Orchestra. And that's a group I don't actually play with. I do all the arts administration for that. So it's really great to get to play in the group and just be a musician and play with Minnesota Bach Ensemble. I'm also actually the music director of St. Edward's Episcopal Church, which is a church that we recorded in today. And again, it's really great to be able to make music in this space. Yeah, I haven't gotten to do that since March. So it's really nice to be here to play in this space with the Minnesota Bach Ensemble and just make music with some really great friends and musicians. I started, like most keyboard players, on the piano. And after my first year at the University of Michigan, I switched to harpsichord. I was told by my piano teacher to take a semester of harpsichord because the teacher was really great. So I did that and then fell just completely in love with the instrument. So I switched from piano to harpsichord after my freshman year at the University of Michigan. And then I started my TA, my teaching assistant position there during my master's, was tuning and maintaining the harpsichords, which has been a great job for me. It's something that I really enjoy doing. Most people don't like doing that technical work. So I rent and tune instruments for groups all over the Twin Cities, including both the orchestras. And realizing that there's kind of a need for this in the Twin Cities, I apprenticed with a harpsichord builder in Amsterdam, the Klinkhammer Workshop, and recently built and completed an instrument under their supervision, which is now finally, during this pandemic, I was able to finish it and get it to the owner who is now playing it. So now I get to hear an instrument that I built myself being played around the Twin Cities as well.
Hi, I'm Adam Kuenzel, the principal flutist of the Minnesota Orchestra and flutist with the Minnesota Bach Ensemble. And the instrument I'm using is a wooden flute. It is not a Baroque flute, however. It's a modern wooden instrument made by Powell in Boston. It's made out of grenadilla wood with silver keys, and the sound of the instrument has maybe a less bright tone than a metal instrument that you'd hear in the full symphony orchestra, and a more mellow sound that works really well with the smaller ensemble. The Bach Ensemble is a wonderful opportunity for me to play much of the music that he wrote for smaller ensembles that obviously I wouldn't have the chance to play in the full orchestra. Two of the more recent highlights for me have been performing the Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach Concerti, one in D minor, which is originally for flute, and the A major concerto, which is also transcribed from the cello concerto. When I moved to Minnesota, I knew that, I moved up here from San Antonio, Texas, and it was a great move. I don't regret it for a moment. I love the winter. I love the winter sports, and I've become a Nordic ski fan and participate in a lot of the local races during the winter. And I enjoy riding a motorcycle on occasion, too.
My name is Käthe Jarka, and I'm a cellist. And I've always felt very connected to Bach. So the Minnesota Bach Ensemble is obviously close to my heart. I joined shortly after I moved to the Twin Cities about 5 years ago. And I think that I've always felt that Bach is kind of like a spiritual practice. It's very humbling, and it's very deep, and it has a lot to say about life without ever saying it in words. So it's kind of it's an important part of my life. I grew up in Missoula, Montana, which is a little university town and a wonderful place. And then when I was just 18, I moved to New York City, which was a big shock. And then over time, I came to really love it there, and I lived there for many years and played in a variety of ensembles, and also trained in another discipline. I trained in the Alexander technique, which is a mind-body practice, which I bring to my teaching and my playing. And then after many years in New York, I moved here because my husband teaches here at the university, and so I moved sort of halfway back to Montana. I love it here. I think it's so beautiful and such a relief to be in a place that's so physically beautiful. But of course, it's a different energy. It's quite a different energy. When I lived in Montana, I was very aware of the landscape. And when I lived in New York, I missed that until I realized that the landscape was the people. And then I loved that. And I really miss the variety and the kind of constant energy of that. But Minnesota has its own beautiful things, which I'm coming to value more and more all the time, even at this strange time. I always enjoy when we play cantatas. I love that kind of playing, and I find that music to be particularly touching. So those are some of my favorite moments, like when we played Cantata 82, is it last season or the season before? But there's so many great moments, joyful moments, and connected kind of moments in those performances. And I also feel that we're really connected to our audience. I feel like I'm beginning to know you personally, and that's kind of unusual and lovely. And yeah, so it's a special thing.
I'm Basil Reeve, and I was former principal oboe of the Minnesota Orchestra, now retired for a while, and I'm the oboe player for the Minnesota Bach Ensemble and one of the founding members. So I've been here since the birth of the ensemble, and I'm watching it grow, and happily it's growing in the right direction, I think. Bach and all of the Baroque composers were very generous to the oboe in a way that the classical and romantic composers, even the great ones, weren't. Whereas in the orchestra, you have fantastic solos in all the major repertoire of the symphony orchestra, but you don't have concertos, you don't have these long, for instance, arias of Bach with obligatos that are just music from heaven. It's really wonderful. And it's a language that is rich, and it grows richer the more you play it, the more you study it, the more you get out of it. It's been a great ride, just learning all this stuff and then getting out on stage and performing it. It's wonderful. As wonderful as the solos are in the big orchestra, quite often you're swallowed up by this massive sound, which is the way it's composed and it's supposed to be. I can't think of very many times in my work with the Bach Ensemble where I feel that I wasn't being heard, that my sound wasn't going out, that I wasn't right living in the moment, and the sound was alive in the hall. So that's something to look forward to, believe me.